Hey everyone, this is Carlos. I'm the CEO at Product School. Today I'm here with Shensi Ding, co-founder at Merge. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Shensi, good to have you. I first met you at ProductCon New York, where you and your team were there introducing your product to a big part of the product community. But I'm curious to learn more about your story with the company. I know you started during the COVID, but what happened back in the day?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a great conference, by the way. Thanks for having us. We had a really good time. So everyone highly recommend going to that conference. So around 5 years ago, my co-founder and I, we were actually best friends from college, and we were both at startups in San Francisco. We were in very different industries. I was at a cybersecurity company called Expanse, and Gil was head of engineering at a recruiting tech company called Jumpstart, and later called Canvas, and then later called Untapped. But what we noticed was that even though we were in very different industries, both of our companies were running into a very similar problem of needing a lot of integrations in order to sell our products, and not having these integrations was really, really constraint on the business. But building these integrations meant having to allocate and hire a lot of engineers and permanently make sure that those engineers were focused on maintaining these integrations, helping with customer success, and it's overarchingly a very, very expensive problem. But what we were noticing was that there wasn't a really great solution out there. The way that most companies were really handling it in 2019 was hiring a lot of engineers, permanently having a large team to maintain these integrations, or they would try different tools like Tray or Workato or Zapier as a band-aid in order to help say that they had certain integrations. But fundamentally, these software tools just didn't solve the problem. And we didn't understand why no one had solved this yet. We knew that this was going to keep getting worse and worse. And we really wanted to be the team to solve it. So that's why we started Merge.
The integrator. So give me an example of some of those common integrations between products.
Yeah. So the company that I used to work at, it was in the cybersecurity space. And what we would do is we would scan the internet to look for any potential risks for companies. And we would surface all of those risks in our dashboard. And there's no way to export that data to any ticketing systems like ServiceNow or Jira. The only way to do that was to download a CSV and then re-upload it every single time there's an update. But because there were millions and millions of rows of data, that over time is not sustainable, just also given how often the data updated. And so what we tried to do at first was launch an API. We were hoping that people then build the integration independently between us and ServiceNow or Jira or whatever's ticketing tool that they were using. That didn't work. And then we ended up hiring a contractor to build the integration with those ticketing services, and that didn't work either. And so what we ended up doing was just hiring a large team of engineers just to focus on those integrations, and that ended up becoming the solution that we went with. My co-founder had looked at a lot of those other tools as well. So looking at whether there was any embedded solutions or asking customers to then purchase a workflow automation tool to then connect their product with any ATSs. But customers just didn't want to do that. It was always a constraint in the sales cycle. And it's also very expensive for those end users to also buy a third piece of software in order to get the second piece of software to start running.
So for the companies that can't afford or couldn't afford an engineer to do the integrations, what was the previous solution?
You just can't do it. You can't afford having integrations, and you can't have your tool offer any integrations.
So right now, when you productize this problem in a way, and now you offer more out of the box integrations between tools. Like, how do you go about it? Like, do you need to set up a partnership with that particular company to allow that integration, or are there any things that you can do independently?
So it depends on the category and then also the API provider. Certain categories are extremely open ecosystem, and it's really easy to just sign up, self-serve, and immediately get a partnership, and then you can just build directly. And the biggest constraint in those cases is not necessarily the partnership, but the time to build the integration. In other cases, it's a closed ecosystem, and you have to first get the partnership and a sandbox account before you can even start building. And then once you start building, then you oftentimes have to communicate with the partner to understand how the API works. But yeah, it depends on the situation, but usually a big constraint is both, unfortunately.
It sounds like a new category in a way, given that there wasn't really that specific competitors and people were kind of solving it by themselves.
Yeah, it was. And it was really hard to convince people that this was the way that the industry was going to move towards. When we were talking to companies in 2019, we met with people in product, we met with engineering leaders, we met with founders, we met with customer success. And a lot of people really felt like there needed to be a better solution out there. But they were skeptical for whether or not companies would feel comfortable outsourcing this to another vendor. But my argument was just like how everyone used to buy and maintain servers in house, people should feel comfortable also outsourcing parts of their code base too. Software is increasingly becoming more and more composable. There's no reason why someone should own this when there's no way that they can be much better or uniquely better at this part of their product. They have another area of their product that they need to focus on and that they're actually selling. It's not the integrations layer.
And I'm thinking about the funding environment. So you raised a total of 75 million.
Yes.
And usually they say when someone comes with a new category, it's usually because there is no category. So how were you able to convince such investors to put so much money into something that wasn't really something easy to understand?
I mean, it was really hard. Our seed round, we really had to teach a lot of people about the integrations industry. And especially back then, a lot of people had to just confuse integrations in general. If you were somewhat integrations related, then you were all competitors, but that's just not the case. Different iPaaS solutions can solve different problems. And also different iPaaS solutions are uniquely good at one part of like the overarching issue with connectivity. And so we had to do a lot of education. We had to teach a lot of people about it. And it helps working with people who already had or talking to people who had a previous understanding of integrations. There's a large learning curve when it comes to that industry. So if you already understand some of the nuances, then it makes the learning curve a little bit smaller, especially when it comes to understanding merge. But over time, once we started getting customers, they started seeing a lot of traction in what the use cases look like, then it became a lot easier.
And now with AI, what is kind of the value proposition there?
It's even better. Like AI is inherently data hungry, and every single B2B company that is powered by AI needs integrations. So it's been incredibly exciting seeing how the industry has been changing and how all these new companies that are forming YC or getting new funding, all of them need integrations. And even existing incumbents that are adding new AI features, they all need integrations. And so we've been getting a lot of inbound and excitement from these companies because it's only possible now to move so quickly with companies like Merge, and then also with all these different LLM providers.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking even for myself, when we started the company, obviously we were relying on third-party tools. We didn't want to build our own CRM or anything like that. In fact, we're still using third-party tools. Very much about buying versus building. And we were patching things together. And some of the companies that you mentioned were like the cheapest possible solutions. But at some point, something exploded. And we're like, oh my God, we need to go back, and an engineer has to fix it or find another solution. So, but it was usually an engineer. So from your go-to-market perspective, like how do you go about getting consensus from engineers, PMs, and other people involved in this decision?
I mean, it's not easy. It's definitely a multi-threaded sales process. We have to usually work with the product manager who's owning the project, work with the developer to see how their experience is going, and also answer any questions as they're going through an evaluation of Merge. But we've really, really trained our team to make sure that we can help answer any questions, that we're also making sure that we're getting buy-in across the entire org. And then finally, we always need to make sure that there's top-down consent on using Merge because it is a big decision. It's a large ticket item. And it also is a permanent P&L impact too. So you really want to make sure that you understand what's going into this partnership and who you're partnering with.
I think once you get in, you don't really get out, right? Because once you create the integration, what would be a reason why someone wouldn't want to keep that?
I think if someone is realizing that they need certain integrations that we haven't been able to add, or there's certain categories that we haven't been able to add, then you may want to end up building that in-house. But I might be biased. I don't think there's a great reason to move off of Merge. There's a lot of features that we offer outside of just the integrations, including observability, and then also our customer success. We're able to really help troubleshoot any of those integrations and help complement your customer success and engineering team in a way that is hard to replicate with any other solution. In addition, if there are any edge cases that we run into, we handle the maintenance. So your engineers don't have to patch every single time a new end user onboards. Merge is really handling that for you.
Got it. So you basically act as an engineer that is there to maintain the integrations that you already created, right?
Yes.
So I'm running into the classic situation where you have big clients, I can imagine, as well as some smaller ones. And classic big client says, I need this new integration with this new tool, but it seems like very unique, right? So how do you balance your roadmap to ensure that you are still providing the right support to those large clients while ensuring that, some of this work can be repurposed for other clients?
It's definitely hard, and there have been situations where one really large customer wants something unique, and I think the great part of having a great partner, like my co-founder Gil, is that he's really a visionary when it comes to thinking through how do we solve this customer's problem in a way that is repeatable for other customers. And it's been really important for us to make sure that whatever we are building, it is normalized and we are able to reuse it across any other use case in category. So that it's been tough. Like are always situations where we'll run into something, but we have a really great team, and Gil is also very creative, and so we've really been able to come up with a lot of great solutions for things that we've always been like, yeah, how do we solve this problem? And it's a team effort.
So for you as the co-founder, like how involved are you in the product versus other areas, given that you have another co-founder?
Very involved. I code every day.
You code every day. How big is the team?
Yes, we're 110 people.
Boom. You're still coding. That's awesome.
I think it's important. It's good for me to get data collection on like what's going on, have a better understanding and empathy for my team as well. I don't have to. It's fun and it's also stress relief, but it's really great for me to just understand what's going on. And also sometimes like it's just I want to make sure the team knows that I'm contributing and that I care about the product, and I'm not just someone top down just telling them to do something. I'm able to help contribute as well.
So if I had to zoom into your schedule, and what would be some of those main themes about how you structure your time?
Yeah, so there are two things that I can uniquely do, and it's recruiting and it's also sales. And so I spend a lot of my time on both. I'll make sure I'm meeting with customers, making sure that they're happy, understanding what their issues are with merge, what their priorities are for their own company, and try to see how we can include that into our roadmap. So I do a lot of customer facing meetings, and I'll also, of course, help our sales team with any new prospects, meeting with those executives, helping them close any deals, and recruiting. Like I really care about our team and making sure we have the best team out there. And I think a big part of the reason why our team is so uniquely strong is because Gil and I are so involved in recruiting. I've helped source a lot of our executives. I have definitely sold them on why they need to join Merge. And even ICs that we feel really strongly about, I will go on those calls and really try to sell them on what the future might look like with Merge. So I spend a lot of my time on that. And then late at night, then I get to coding. But those are the two areas that are really important for me. And I spend all of my time on that. And then also making sure I'm getting as much context on the business so that I can help make good decisions whenever someone is coming to me with some trade-offs.
But this is something that is very top of mind for me as a founder as well, company of similar size. And recruiting, sales, product have always been my priorities. And I want to learn from other founders about how they do it. Because one thing I learned is that there is no one size fit all job description. And in fact, that job description can evolve. So when you talk about importance of recruiting, like how deep do you go? Like, do you make it a point to meet every single person before they join or after? Like what are some of those ways of working?
Oh yeah, I source a lot. I don't source as much now just because I'm not recruiting for an executive currently. But when I'm recruiting for an executive or a very senior role where it's on me, I source all day. I'll source for hours. I'll source on the weekends. It's really important because people may respond to me when they may not respond to a recruiter. And I want the best people joining the company. And so I want the pool of people that we could potentially be talking to be as big as possible. So I spend a lot of time sourcing, and every single candidate before they get an offer has to meet me or Gil. We go through a culture interview to better understand like what makes them happy at work. What are they looking for? Like what are they optimizing for? How do they feel about their previous roles and companies? And just better understand them so that we know that they're a good fit for the company.
So how do you think about culture?
It's really important. It's hard to pull back if you end up loosening it too much. So from the very beginning, it's been really important for us to make sure that the people we're hiring are really high energy and genuinely care a lot about merge. Because it's not fair to everyone else if most people are working really hard and are giving it their all, and there's a few people that just don't care. And that matters to me a lot. I want to make sure that the whole team is on board because in the end, this is a team sport. There's no single person that can solely change the trajectory of this company. It's the entire team that has to contribute and be rowing in the same direction. So we focus a lot on the culture and making sure that if people are deviating outside of it, there's not a lot of tolerance for it. Everyone has to care a lot of the company and you have to give it your all.
That's one thing I found from my own experience. We were much smaller, is that culture was basically my culture. As the team evolved, that's obviously I'm still influencing the culture, but it's not mine anymore. And I had to create mechanisms and empower other people to have leverage, and also create a space for people to contribute to that team culture without sacrificing certain things that are non-negotiables to me. So I'm always curious to know if there's any, ways for you to document that culture, or when you say that I want to ensure someone is the right cultural fit, I want to ensure that they are good for a company. Like, how do you document that so others other than the founders can talk about it?
We do debriefs all together as a group, and all the hiring managers can see what are the questions that Gil and I ask. We also record a lot of our interviews too. We use a tool for that. That helps us a lot with like debriefs and understanding like what questions did we ask, what did they say, like why do we feel like certain things were red flags, or why do we feel like this person was a really strong fit. But those debrief moments are really important, and we talk a lot about like why like this person would be a great fit or not. We could probably be doing a better job of documenting, but I will say there's a general feeling when you work at Merge, like people, there is a feeling everyone, it's very consistent. Everyone is very high energy and just gives like a lot and cares a lot. I don't quite know how we can write that down in a way that's accurate or that's fully encompassing what that feeling is. But I don't think it's possible to hire someone and change them into this culture. I think they need to come in and join Merge with that commitment and interest in what we're building.
I agree with that. I made that mistake before of hiring someone without conviction, just because we thought, well, they seem to check the boxes, but they'll figure out the rest. And there are certain things that you can learn, but I think there are certain cultural elements that you need to bring to the table. It's how do you teach hunger? How do you teach speed to someone who hasn't done it before?
I agree. I agree. And so that's my hottest take is I don't think you can change people. I think you can only hire people that are already are going to be successful.
Yeah. And well, let's talk about your product as well in terms of like what makes it unique, right? So I understand this new category that you are creating and how it's solving this problem that was more of a service before and you are productizing. I know that focus on speed and quality is important to you. What does that really mean?
What that means is every time Gil and I we debrief on like how this week went and like even how this day went. Like we talk all the time, just like trying to reflect on what could we be doing better as a company and how is our team currently performing. And one thing that we always think about is compared to other companies out there, what is the benchmark for output? Like where do we benchmark in terms of output? And if we're not at the top, then something is wrong. We need to be pushing the team harder, or we need to make sure that everyone understands what the expectations are. But our team, we've always killed it. Like we have we have a great team that pushes themselves. They push each other. They're really focused on making sure we're moving as quickly as possible. We also just have a lot of customers that are pulling it out of us. I think it's harder to just push for it if no one wants that. But we also have the customers pulling it out of us too, which I think helps us a lot too. But yeah, I think it's just really focusing on that reflection, thinking about what we can be doing better. Are we hiring the right people? Do we hire, like, how do we like encourage and train the managers to like encourage their team as well? So yeah, it's just a lot of reflection and then executing on that.
So from the strategic standpoint, as you define your high level goals, like what system do you use to set those goals and ensure that they are also easy to understand by people who are not in the executive room?
So we do have OKRs, but I will say they're pretty lightweight. They're not like Google level. So we'll have high level OKRs for the company and then each department and how they roll up to the overarching company goals. But I wouldn't say that it's like, okay, but then we have all these different line items that are rolling up. It's more just like, okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish this quarter. And then at the end of the quarter, did we end up hitting that?
And so every quarter you refresh them.
Yes, we do.
And so you mentioned two key moments where you raised capital. One was during the pandemic, right? That's when you started the company. And then remember you raised during the Q4 of 2022. That was the main Series B, right?
Yes, it was.
So kudos to you for raising during
Thank you.
those times, but also like how, given how the economic perspective evolved, especially during those 2 years, and as you think about setting realistic priorities while pushing the team to achieve them, like where are you in this in the journey, like in terms of growth versus profitability versus like long term mayor, like like moonshots?
We're very much focused on growth, but while also making sure that it's a high quality business. I think expectations for efficiency have definitely changed over the past few years. And we also had to adjust. I think before, whenever our team was really stretched, we would just be like, okay, let's open headcount and end up hiring. But now, because we're just at a different stage, a lot more of it is focused on efficiency and thinking through, okay, the team is really stretched. How do we make the team a little bit more efficient? And what targets do we need to hit before we end up opening more headcount? Just because the standards from before are just not relevant for now, and everyone just needs to do more with less. And so we're also thinking a lot about like, okay, how do we continue being a really high quality company? How do we continue growing really quickly while also being very efficient? It's tough. It's always going to be tough, but it's been a really interesting challenge for us, just because like it's a new market from anything we've had merged be in before. And it just we have a really great team to help solve it. So it's been really interesting and fun too.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of the people that I've hired in recent years, they never saw a downturn. So for them, it was not easy to understand the new reality. So obviously, as you do your board meetings and as you try to show performance while still keeping an eye on growth, like I'm curious to know, where do you see the future of your company and even your category moving towards?
I mean, there's no reason why merch shouldn't exist forever. There's also no reason why this shouldn't be a generational company. I want to IPO. I think that this idea is the right place, right time. And I also think that every company that forms now that is a B2B SaaS company needs integrations. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be the company to capture that.
Yeah, I think I always think about this image of like a B2B SaaS company replacing a spreadsheet and putting themselves in the middle, connecting to everybody. But the reality is that the connectors weren't always there. And even for a company
Yes,
whose
it's
core,
true.
right? Like a lot of companies that in the product space, right? They're trying to do a roadmap or a prototype or data analytics, you name it. They're focused on that, and then the integrations come second. Integrations are important, but at the same time, I haven't seen a company for what integrations comes first. That's the actual core product.
Yeah, it is.
So when you go and pitch this, or you focus on sales as well, and you talk to other companies, and they're like, okay, look, we have our own integrations, or maybe they're using another patch, whatever it might be. Like where do you focus more? Is it on the revenue growth? Is it more on the cost saving? Is it what is the magical part that makes them also agree with the fact that merch should exist forever?
The great part is it's both revenue generating and then also cost cutting. So it's everything that you just said. It's the combination of the two, and also the fact that it's just a painful experience for a lot of companies. They don't have visibility. They're not uniquely good at it. They don't have a lot of people who are trained on those integrations already as well. And so there's a lot of different avenues that we can usually take. It just depends on where that company is currently in their life cycle.
Mhm. Cool. Well, Shensi, thank you for your time. I love doing these deep dives and learn more about the product, especially from the founder. Um, and it was a pleasure to have you part of the product community. I mean, product people in general are eager to learn and play with these new tools, and I know many of our members are already using your product.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Mhm.